Welcome to Hashtag with Navguzi Chwanuka. This is a place where we help you unravel social constructs, discuss self-development in line with mental health, emotional well-being, and everything in between that directly or indirectly affects us in the millennial world around us. If you're hearing my voice for the first time and are the kind of person who is not scared of being a better version of yourself even if it requires you to contradict who you were 24 hours ago, consider this your virtual home. I'm your host, Navguzi Chwanuka, and I cannot wait to engage with you in the various conversations. This Wednesday is not one of our usual Wednesdays because it carries our second last episode of season 3. Yes, our second last episode. I am so happy. I am filled with joy, not because I am leaving, but it has been a journey. Today also marks the last day of November, and we are closing the month with none other than Ojok Okello. Ojok is a rural futurist. This is something I learned. Let me not act like I know. I just learned this word. I'd never heard of it until I talked to him. So Ojok is a rural futurist and the founder of Okere City. In his quest for a sense of belonging in his paternal village, Ojok found himself transforming what should have been his country home into an early childhood development center. In this episode, Ojok and I touch a bit on the impact of war on one's mental health and further discussed African heritage and the colonial distortion thereof. If anything resonates with you during our conversation, remember to share with us on social media with the hashtag HTNKInsation. Let's dive into it. Ojok Okello, welcome to Hashtag with Navguzi Chwanuka.
Thank you. Thank you very much for having me.
I don't know. Let me not assume. Just introduce yourself. Let me not assume that people know you already.
Thank you. My name is Ojok Okello, and I'm a rural futurist. Try to imagine what remote and the countryside could be like in the future. So a significant amount of my time is working with rural communities and making sure that we create projects that, build livelihood possibilities and capabilities, but also that make the rural people to dream bigger and better. And through that, I started Okere City project, which has a very ambitious plan of building the first sustainable rural city in Africa.
The first sustainable rural city in Africa.
Yeah.
I'm going to be silly. What is Ojok City? Is Ojok City also looking at it being the first one, or you just don't have an idea of what Ojok is about?
Well, for the past 10 years, Ojok has been talking about Ojok City.
You're so sure of the years?
Yes, but there is no city. There is no Ojok City. It's just an idea.
Mm-hmm.
But for us, we are not just talking about a utopian place. Mm-hmm. About a dream and a gated community of wealthy people who, might end up building these cities and creating more inequalities and more problems associated with capitalism. Mm-hmm. But for 3 years now, we've been building Okere City, and we are creating numerous opportunities and possibilities for 5,000 people in a deep, remote village in Otuke district, northern Uganda, a community that is still reeling from conflict and from war. And we've been able to make sure that 500 children go to school through our community school. We've been able to make sure that 200 rural women have access to skilling and development opportunities through our vocational training programs. We've been able to make sure that rural people have access to better healthcare and medical facilities through our community healthcare facility that on a daily basis welcomes up to about 30 people to the medical facilities. And we've created up to about 50 jobs through our community restaurant, through the supermarket, and through other sorts of social enterprises.
It's huge.
Yes.
How did you come to think of this? Because you've mentioned the bit of, when I asked about Ojok City, that you talked about the bit of capitalism increasing the inequality gap. Do we then look at Okere City as a dream coming from you reducing the inequality gap in Uganda?
Yes. The ill side of capitalism is that the rich will keep on getting richer and the poor will keep on getting poorer. And the poor keep on getting poorer because they have no access to resources that they need to build on the resources that they have. Because indeed, the poor actually have lots of resources. In fact, the rich will always have to take away the resources from the poor in order to become richer, right? So what we're then trying to do with the project is how do we make sure that the resources that the poor people have are used for their own advancement and betterment. And that is the greatest deal of what makes our project so important. So we start looking at, one, the rural person as a human resource in him or herself. But we also understand that this human resource might not be developed. They might not have the skills, they might not have the knowledge, they might not have the perspective to see the world in a different, better dimension, perhaps. And so what we do is invest in enhancing these human capacities and capabilities to expose the rural people so that they know that, we are actually a resource and we can do something for our own greater good. The other aspect of resource is the natural resource that the poor people have. Most of the time, it's not developed. And for our case, we have the shea trees, which is a natural resource that grow naturally in our locality. So, of course, the capitalist firms will just come and buy the shea nuts at the cheapest of prices and take it away and add value to it and sell it to European or North American markets. But what we do is we say we're not going to do this. We are going to harvest our resource. We are going to add value to it. We are going to sell it as a community. And so the benefits come directly to the people, who are at the best of the entirety of the operations. And so, for the last 3 years, we've been making incremental but significant progress.
When I look at you being a solution thinker, I would say, in Otoke, did you say Otoke? Oh my God. Yes. I was worried I was going to make a mistake. In Otoke village, is it because you grew up in this space or did you have to leave and then return and you're like, what is happening?
Yes, so my father died when I was a baby and we had to leave the village, again, because of a toxic masculine society. There were attempts for my mother to be inherited by, one of my uncles who already had 3 wives then, and she refused. And sort of as a punishment, she was abandoned. And so for the rest of my childhood and a significant part of my adulthood life, I'd even never been to this village. And so I mostly grew with my mom and my other siblings, of course, in Lira City, which is about 80 kilometers from the village. But as if that was for the greatest reason, because my mother, she worked so hard. Despite the impossible odds, she made sure that we went to school, public schools, but really good schools. And that really shaped the kind of future that would become for us. So about just 4 years ago, actually, that's when I, together with my elder brother, decided that we have to go back to the village. And why? Of course, we are African people and our ancestors and our roots are significant.
That's
we are
right.
Significantly attached and lived in town and, you just notice that there are very many limitations, especially to what you can do. But also questions of who am I? Where do I belong? These are questions that any reasonable person would have to ask themselves. So as part of the journey to finding about my identity and my roots, I went to the village, and I had never been to a hopeless society like Okere. One is, and considering the fact that I'm a development worker, right? I'd worked with rural communities in northern Uganda. But when I went to this village, I couldn't fathom the degree of hopelessness. I mean, it was a bush. There was basically nothing. Remember, even before the community had been displaced from this village for over 20 years because of the Lord's Resistance Army, even before that, there were Karimojong cattle rustlers. And so the assets in terms of the cattle that this community had was even taken away from them. So when the LRA conflict erupted, it added to already an existing problem in the community. So, when I went, people had just started returning to the village after staying in the internally displaced people's camps for over 15 plus years. So many people were just starting to rebuild. And when I went, of course, I had very many questions rising in my mind, like, where do we start from?
Yeah.
And I really didn't know where to start from and what to do. But at least at that time, I had a experience. I'd been doing development work for 10 years. And I also had money, I'd been working with international organizations. And I also had social networks, social and professional networks, that could be potentially very instrumental in whatever ideas that would emerge out of these. And so at the end of the day, I started, just first of all, figuring out what I could do to make myself comfortable at home. Right? So that when I return from Kampala or wherever I'm from, at least I have a roof over my head, maybe a shower, maybe a good toilet.
Yeah. Not using the bushes.
Yes, but as I start putting these things in place, and I had this idea of the idyllic countryside, right? Like huge compound, nice home, think of those things you see in the movies. And we could potentially create that, and I actually started creating it. But once we had like a huge compound with nice grass planted, the children in the village started descending to this space to come and play. And one day, it was a normal school day, and I was home. There were like 20 little children, ranging between 3 to 10 years, playing in the various games. I came to them, asked them, "You kids, why are you not going to school?"
Yeah.
They just said, "We don't go to school." I'm like, "Why?" They said there is no nursery school here. Okay, and I was like,
Nursery school even for the 10-year-olds?
Yeah, so there is a primary school, a government public school, about 4 kilometers away. Yeah, but the children, it's walkable distance. It's not so far. But yeah, so for the little children, for the 3 to 7 year, for those who should be at least attending early childhood development programs, they were not. And also there was generally a lack of interest for the community to even let their children attend the primary school. So that bothered me. And so what I then did was, move around, to a few homesteads, talk to the community, ask them why, they are not taking their children to school. And for the majority of them, especially for those who are supposed to start undergoing early childhood development or nursery school, they just said there is nothing they could do. And that is just how the idea of starting an early childhood development center just came. So the house that I had built for myself, as my
your country
home was just instantaneously turned into a classroom. And that is how the Okere City project
How long back is this? Are we still looking at 4 or 5 years ago?
Yeah, we are talking about 2019.
That's 3 years ago.
That's just 3 years ago.
You've done so much. I feel in a space of 3 years. And I think, do we then give credit to the social networks?
I think it is a combination of both, of a plethora of factors. But most importantly is the need and the people, the interests of the community. So remember, we're working on a clean slate. Basically, nothing exists. People still die from common waterborne diseases like diarrhea or dysentery or even cholera just because they have to get water from an open well, which is not protected. And so any idea to make sure that there is a borehole is certainly welcome by the community. So the need exists, but also most importantly is placing the community at the center stage of defining their own destiny. Right. So as a development worker, I had seated at offices in either Kololo, sometimes going to Berlin or even London and thinking about development project ideas. And these ideas often would just be thrown onto people without any form of consultation, without any form of participation. And these projects seldom work.
Right.
And I knew that to make this idea work, it had to be a people-led or a community-led initiative where they are at the center stage, where they are the forerunners. And so anything we want to do, it must be in consultation and in partnership with the community. And basically my work is to take a backseat, offer guidance here and there, provide technical advice if necessary, and look for money perhaps, because if you need to do a school, you need a classroom block, and to just the in-kind support from the community to lay blocks, to bring firewood for cooking or whatever, it's not enough, right? You need money to buy cement, and the community does not have a lot of disposable income because of their poor economic status. So my work basically would be to look around for resources and then enlist the support and cooperation, and partnership with the community to make sure that the work is done.
Right.
Yeah.
You've talked about going back to the village and finding that people were just returning or settling in, and also based on your background, your professional background, I would say, you've worked with the people that have been affected by war.
Yes.
Especially, you say the children, I think.
Yes.
For the children, what are the things that you felt like they were really struggling with in as far as coming back to the normal sense of society?
Yes. So in the beginning of my career, I worked with War Child UK, which is an international charity that works in conflict zones, in war zones. So for 3 years, I worked with children, formerly abducted children in the LRA war, in the Lord Resistance Army. And my work was basically, to give them the economic possibilities to enable them become integrated into the society.
Right.
But, during the project, you notice that these children do not just need the loan or the financial resources to start up businesses. They need a lot of mental support. They need a lot of emotional support and guidance, because initially we trained them on entrepreneurship, on business management, even gave them soft loans. But we noticed that the rate of business collapse was so high. We also noticed that the loan repayment rates were so low. And for what reasons? Customer care.
Oh.
Right? So somebody comes, they want to purchase something from the shop, and they tell you the product or whatever you want to buy is 1,000 shillings, and you tell them, I don't have 1,000 shillings. What, can you reduce it for me? And the guy just bursts, either shouting at you or chasing you away from his shop.
No negotiation.
Yeah, no negotiations. But you see, it's because they're coming from a background where negotiation doesn't exist. Mm-hmm. So we then had to go back and had to design a very specific curriculum, about how do we provide psycho-social support to this young breed of entrepreneurs. How do we make sure that we give them emotional guidance? And ultimately it worked, because as soon as we tried to address some of these challenges, we actually saw fundamental improvement in business growth and development.
Right. And when it comes to Okere City and you having to talk to these people, asking them about why the children are not going to school, do you feel like the trauma of being residents for 15 years in internally displaced camps and then coming back to a new kind of space, an independent space where they can actually provide things for themselves? Do you feel like the education wasn't something they gave so much thought when they were trying to settle into this new system?
Yes. So when we talk about rural northern Uganda and the aftermath of conflict, but also post-conflict reconstruction, we cannot discard mental health. One is that we are talking about people who are reeling from conflict and from war, from people who are significantly psychologically disturbed, and people who experienced trauma. Mm-hmm. So how do you facilitate a trauma healing process? How do you make sure that somebody who saw their children or who saw their husband being murdered integrate, have a better mindset? How do you make sure that somebody whose child was abducted and they have never returned still be able to participate in the construction of the future? These are very complex questions and complex realities that we have to contend with as a project. And indeed, we have, tried as much as possible to organize community trauma healing sessions where we just come together as a community and perform songs in memory and remembrance of the people who either died or who never came back.
Yeah.
And we have, because we've noticed that when something is taken away from you and you don't know where it is, like the questions, and like you never find answers to the questions. So we just thought that maybe creating a platform where people can talk about experiences of shared loss can also act as an opportunity to make people let go, if it's even possible.
Release some pent-up emotions.
Yes, release, yeah. And of course, it's ultimately a very complex problem with several layers. One that I don't know that it can be addressed, because, I've had close friends, die or be abducted, and I have never forgotten. I still see images. I still, wish they were here. But I don't know. It's complex. Right. But as a project, what we basically do is make sure that as a community, how do we remember the people who were abducted, the people who died? How do we celebrate this sense, this loss together, right? Because we are not just going to mourn. We should also celebrate them. Right. One of the one of the elders, one of our grandfathers in the village was killed. And during the LRA, the rebels came in his house and torched his hut, and he was burnt. So one of the things we do every year is just organize events to celebrate the life of this person, right? And we perform rituals, we erect small huts, and instead of using it to cry, we then use this hut as a barbecue, for food, which is for roasting food or beef, which is then eaten by family members and the community. So it's a complex one, but one that we also try to navigate around.
I think what has struck me is hearing you talk about some people feeling like, where did this person go? We are not sure if they died or not. Yes. That's complex.
Yeah, it's complex.
Because I don't know, I feel like you're not even sure if you're supposed to mourn that they died.
Yes.
Or that they're out there somewhere and just either failed to come back or just decided not to come back.
Yes. It's a complex one, and that is why we just decided that maybe let's celebrate them.
Right.
Because maybe they are not dead. Maybe one day they shall come back. 20 years now.
I don't know how much more someone can hope. It's really complex.
Yeah, but also there are like people who were abducted and they have episodes, of mental health breakdown, people who saw very close ones being killed. And how do they go about this loss? That's complex, and unfortunately not much is being done. Even, the various post-conflict reconstruction projects in northern Uganda only focused on livelihood, on
things of how to move forward.
Yes, but not really addressing the complex issues around mental health and the like.
And you talked about the value of identity when you decided to go back to your village. We're having Song of Lawino coming up.
Yes, yes.
Next year, people should be prepared to have an experience of it. Help us understand Song of Lawino, especially me. Let me not say us, specifically me. I'm so guilty that I've had Song of Lawino, the word itself or the title, but I've never, oh my God, I even feel so embarrassed. I've never taken time to know what it is really about. I know Okere City. That is also a name I'm learning to pronounce. But again, I've not had the privilege of experiencing his works. So help us understand Song of Lawino first, and then we get to delve into what value it carries for people that are looking for a sense of identity, especially as Africans or Ugandans per se.
Thank you. So one of the things we do as Okere City project to make sure that our community participate in the construction of a livable and a progressive society is to make sure that they participate, is to make sure that they are actors, not just passive recipients of the work that we are doing.
Right.
And our society is also an extremely artistic society in terms of poetry, in terms of songs and dances. And it is the one thing that the war never took away from us. Because even during in the camps, during the war, people would still descend in their thousands to sing and dance, a form of collective, sharing of loss. And this remains a significant part of our societal structure and operations. And so as part of, this social and cultural development, we also believe that theater is a significant part of it. And how do we make sure that the community then participates in theatrical productions and performances beyond the confines of their village? Because we do this. Every Saturday is a community day at Okere City.
Yeah.
The Sunday is a market day. there will be one guy playing a thumb piano here, another person playing, how do you call it? We call it a riggeding, or it's a...
could it be a kadingidi in Luganda? I'm not very sure.
Yes, but it's a beautiful musical instrument. So like whenever people go to drink local brews and women tend, they are social events, they have either carried a drum or a local flute or whatever it is. So people already have these and they enjoy it amongst themselves. But unfortunately, we also live in a capitalistic society system where maybe commercializing a value or a practice or a product that you have will make you reap some economic benefits from it and enable you to protect it even better. And that is why we are bringing Okot Pabitek's Song of Lawino and Song of Ochol to theater next year in 2023. So first of all, Okot Pabitek is a literary genius. He can only be lumped together with other African greatest writers such as Ngugi wa Thiong'o, Wole Soyinka, Chinua Achebe, and the rest. So, Song of Lawino is a lamentation about the cultural death of her husband, Ochol.
Cultural death of her husband.
Yes. So
what is that? Wait. What is cultural death of her husband?
Yes. So cultural death of her husband is about Ochol, who gets an education, a Western education. He lives his remote Acholi village, comes to Kampala, but also goes to England. And when Ochol comes back, Ochol does not like the practices and tradition of the Acholi people. He thinks that ancestral worship is devil worship. Ochol thinks that amazing food like boyo or malakwang is like he cannot understand why people eat food like this.
Ochol
even cannot understand why people still dance La Raka Raka. So Ochol is dead. According to Lawino, the wife, his husband came back home as a dead man, at least in cultural terms. So the book is really about the lamentations of this woman who wishes her husband never got the education. And remember, the husband was the son of the chief. So Lawino wonders, as the fire given birth to ash, right?
Yeah.
And Ochol, of course, still defends his Western Eurocentric values. Ochol has preferences for Zumba, over La Raka Raka dance. He wants to eat pizza and burgers over boyo or malakwang. Or if he can eat a vegetable, then it has to be lettuce.
Wow.
Yes. And then Ochol even extends his hatred for traditional values by marrying another wife with shared Western interests and values. So Ochol and Clementine unite their forces in the destruction of African traditions and values. The book was set in 1950s, 1960s Uganda. But the reality has really never changed.
It's still present with us.
Yes. I mean, Lawino asks Ochol what the name Paul means or what the name Bernadette actually means. Why Ochol suddenly thinks that, joke names like Apio, like Achen, like Ojok are suddenly not liked by people like Ochol. I think it's not any strange now that parents are increasingly giving their children Western names and discarding local names. It's also not strange that traditional forms of worship and other cultural forms of religious practices, are being wiped out, in favor for Western religious practices like Christianity and the like. So the play that we are bringing is this contrast and the complex life that African people have to live. On the one end, you must still espouse some of these Western cultural values. We're having this conversation in English, and yet...
Wait, you can't bring that up because we wouldn't have had it in Luganda, would we?
There could have been a way. I'm sure there was going to be a way.
Which way were we going to have?
I don't know.
Exactly.
There was definitely going to be a way. There was definitely going to be a way. Have you ever wondered how even transactions happened in pre-colonial African societies? And remember, we were basically small nations that never spoke each other's languages, but we traded.
That was barter trade.
Yeah, but how did we do it?
You point at the product.
Yeah, I'm sure. Maybe so. You see, because the problem doesn't exist now, so there hasn't even been technological innovations and inventions around the same. But there was going to be a way. There is always a way.
No, there was not going to be a way I was going to communicate. I don't even think I can greet in your language.
You see, that doesn't really matter. So maybe I was going to, be more proactive in learning your language, and you would.
How long was that going to take for us to have a 1 hour's conversation?
How long did it take for you to learn and fluently speak English?
I don't know how long it took because I've been speaking it from, as an infant.
So the same amount of time. So you have
that?
to take time.
How long was it going to take for us to record the podcast?
You see, so you are now speaking on behalf of Ojok.
No.
You're speaking on me, which is okay.
No, oh my goodness,
yeah,
no.
So this conversation is just to attest, how significant this play is, right? So it brings into context present realities, and of course the character of Clementine. Who was a strong, educated woman at that time. We try to reimagine what other roles did Clementine play in the construction of the Ugandan state, like participation in independent struggles, in building a modern home, the homes we have these days, and things like that. So it's a very, very lively and present play. And it also tells us that the world doesn't move as fast as we think because certain realities still stay.
We're looking at pre-colonial times.
Yes.
Or no, rather, pre-independence
yeah.
times. I even feel guilty to say independent. And here we are, how many years later? Over 100.
Maybe 60.
No, they're not over 100.
About 60 years.
About 60 something.
60, 70 years. Yeah.
And we're still having this going on.
Yes.
Although, I don't know, what do you feel is happening in our generation? Do you feel like there is more vigor for us to have a sense of identity as Africans? What is your experience of it?
Yeah, and as somebody who has been very deliberate and intentional in making sure that I do not only ask these questions, but also try to find the answers. It's one of the things that led me back to the village to try to find where I come from, to try to understand who am I, to try to question what my name even means, right? So I think that what we have now is a more conscious and a reawakened generation. But it is premised on the fact that we have been, many people, especially the millennials and the Gen Zs, were born in these system, the capitalist system, and it seems as if there is no alternative. But the other truth also is that the system is not perfect. It still produces more losers and very few winners, right? There are loopholes. The young people don't have jobs, right? A significant number of young people don't have jobs. And so this kind of consciousness are just also enables young people to ask questions about their identity, also about their future, and what could the other alternatives be. And also, there is also, of course, a fundamental realization that some of the values that we embrace, borrowed from the West, does not work for us.
Right.
Whether it is in how our societies are governed, whether it is in how we worship God or gods or whatever, whether it is in how we relate, engage with each other. So the existence of these loopholes then make people to try to find alternative answers to these questions, and maybe, just maybe, finding our truer selves, finding our identities, and going back to the source.
Right.
Is the beginning. After all, isn't it Aimee Césaire who said that only by returning to the source can we find our true selves?
Nice. It's like a summary of this episode. Because we were seeing you going back to Otoke, and then you're bringing up Okere City, and you're changing communities. What does it mean for you to finding Ojok Okello? What are some of the things that you've had to do apart from returning to the village?
Yeah, so apart from returning, I also had to ask myself, what is in a name? Just like William Shakespeare once asked. Of course, according to Shakespeare, a rose is still a rose. It doesn't matter how it's called. It is still a rose, right? But I disagree completely with Shakespearean way of thinking, because I think that our names connect us to who we are as a people and to where we come from and the people who came before us. And I also fundamentally believe that the ancestors keep watching over us, and one of the ways we can get connected to them is by having ourselves and our children named and connected to them. And one of the things that I had to do was to actually swear an affidavit and remove it was my name.
It was, as long as it appears to documents that you still claim to be yours.
Yeah, so one of the things I did was to be very deliberate and intentional, and make sure that I have at least a full African name, one that is connected to my ancestry and to my culture. That is one. And the other one is we also have to really be very deliberate in what we eat. I mean, even the science has it just right that local vegetables, so whatever vegetables we eat, it's much better than grabbing a KFC or whatever food it is, that junk it is that you want to eat. So also check on what you're eating. The truth is that colonialism and slavery and now coloniality has taken away a lot from us. So if there is something that we can do to make sure that we retain some, I think it is prudent that we do it.
Then Okere City.
Yes.
How does someone get to support your project, Okere City?
Yes, and before one even thinks about supporting our project, I think it's important that you understand the work that we are doing. So if you are in Kampala, if you're in Uganda, we welcome visitors. It's now a tourist destination. So you can come and have a very rich and authentic cultural and community experience. That's really what you can do for us. Come visit us, come check what we are doing, and maybe you'll get inspired, to also do something for your community. Because if we all did something for our communities, we would create a very strong African continent.
That's right.
And a stronger continent is what we need more than anything else. You can, of course, also check our work on our social media, www.okerecity.org, and on almost all social media platforms, most active on Instagram, Twitter, and Facebook. And check on our work and reach out. We'll always be excited to have you.
So the products, they can always find the products there. I think do you only have shea butter, or are there other products that you make?
Oh, we have, shea butter is our biggest product because we also believe that, shea butter is one of the biggest global products at the moment. And
do we give credit to wheat? Do we give for your glow?
Yes, of course. Definitely, I wouldn't use anything else. And I think I even look younger for my age. And by the way, shea butter is actually anti-aging. It is significant. It slows the growth and development of wrinkles on the face. So you please, and the next time you need to try shea butter, please
consider Okere City.
Consider Okere shea butter.
Okere shea butter.
Yes.
Okay. And do we have to leave people contact? Or do they have to just go on the website and find the contact?
Yeah, just go on the website. It's a very rich and robust website. You'll find quite a lot.
For the people that want to be present for the Song of Lowino play, or should I say production?
Yes.
What details can they take away from this episode, as far as ticket price and the dates?
Well, so if you could get an early bird, it's going to cost you just 30,000 shillings. But if you want to wait, you can as well bring 50,000 on the days of the production, which will be 27th, 28th, and 29th of January 2023.
How do they get the tickets?
We're going to set up mobile money platforms where you can just pay, and we shall be able to share that.
All right.
Yes.
Thank you so much.
Thank you. It's been wonderful having this conversation.
Finding your true self is nothing less than what we always advocate for on the podcast. Thank you so much for joining us in this episode, and I look forward to seeing you in the next week, and it will be the very last. Yeah, next week it will be the very last episode of season 3, and I'm really, oh my god, let me not do the speech today. Thank you so much for tuning in to another episode of Hashtag with Navuzich1K. If you loved what you heard, make sure you subscribe to Hashtag with Navuzich1K in your podcast platform of choice, and share it with your friends, loved ones, and everyone that you believe is affected by the millennial world around us. Also, feel free to share your insights about what connected with you on social media, and be sure to tag us. We are at Hashtag with Navuzich1K on Facebook and Instagram, and on Twitter our handle is at HTNK Podcast. If you are in search of someone to help you mentally, someone who is a professional in that field, do not hesitate to reach out on my email, nabuguzi@nabuguzichwanka.com, or you can even send in any queries. I will be ready to respond, and I will also be ready to pair you with the right persons. Kale, goodbye. See you next week. Remember to find your true self.